Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm wearing the Shield shirt today. Why? Because I have just watched the Falcon and Winter Soldier for the second time for you guys and girls, and we're going to talk about it. Let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Ramblin' Man video. Today we're going to be reviewing and discussing the Falcon and Winter Soldier, the entire series at once. Before we get there, my name is William. I am the Ramblin' Man. If you like my content, if you like what you see and what I'm doing, go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps out the algorithm and the discoverability of my channel. Maybe also think about hitting that subscribe button if you're feeling fancy. And if you want a more personal one-on-one discussion about anything I talk about in any of my videos, I stream every Tuesday and Saturday after 4 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. Link will be in the description box below. So without any further ado, let's hop into Falcon and Winter Soldier. So, when I first heard about this show on Disney Plus, I thought that I would hold my reservations because while it is Marvel, it's also Disney, and I was just like, where are they going with this? Are they going to muddy the waters? Are they going to get stagnant? And I mean, WandaVision was nice and good, but it wasn't great, and it didn't really get great until like the last two episodes. The last two episodes were great for me, but that's not what we're talking about in this video. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, on the other hand, was fantastic storytelling from beginning to end. I absolutely loved it. And my first thought after viewing this entire series was, I'm a writer. Well, I've tried to teach myself script writing and developing story and all of that in my spare time as a hobby. Who writes scripts as a hobby, right? But yeah, and I thought the show very much followed a 5-act structure. Where episode 1 is your introduction. Episode 2 is your rising action, your rising movement, where things escalate, and then episode 3 and 4 are your climax, and then episode 5 and 6 are your resolution. So I thought it was very interesting to see the overall story follow that format, and it be so obvious to someone who had, well, if you do script writing, it would be obvious, but for someone who doesn't know, it's just an overall arcing story, and it fits very well. It takes you on a ride from beginning to end. I loved it. So let's break it down episode by episode very quickly. So episode 1 is the New World Order. It basically sets up everything that's going to come, everything, and it leads you from where we were at the end of Endgame to where we're going. I think very much that this show is the opening salvo for Phase 4. WandaVision was kind of a teaser, but this is very much the meat and potatoes of the introduction of Phase 4. At the opening of episode 1, you get a nice callback to Endgame. It actually quite literally opens with Steve and Sam's conversation there at the end, where Steve says, try it on, how does it feel? And Sam says, it feels like it was meant for someone else, or it feels like it's someone else's. I thought that was a nice touch, a nice kind of segue moment from past to future. You've got a nice fight scene in a C-130 kind of Dark Knight Rises style with Sam and what we would come to find out is some of the pirates of Madripoor. You've got Falcon versus Chopper, Falcon versus Gunship, which was just a ride and a thrill to watch happen. Fantastic graphics, fantastic moving the story along. It wasn't out of place. It was great. It we get the introduction of the Flag Smashers in this episode through a conversation with Sam's intel officer, Lieutenant Torres, and himself. They talk about how they're the ones to watch and that they're the ones he's worried about, this, that, and the other. We learn this takes place a few months after Endgame. And we also find out that Sam is not taking up the mantle. He's turning over the shield. He wants to, let it retire, let it go. It's Cap's, and Cap's gone, so the shield should just be a relic to the past, a memory, something to look at, but not be used for anything other than that. He's got a great quote in this episode about symbols are nothing without the men and women that give them meaning. And I think that holds true. Basically, what Sam's saying is the shield is a symbol at this point, and the symbol, if put on a pedestal, loses its meaning, essentially. And people won't tend to remember what made that symbol and the ideals and the principles and the struggles that made that symbol important. I think Sam is pretty much, I think he's scared to take up the mantle more than he's scared of doing the right thing, which the right thing would be to honor Steve's wishes and take up the mantle. You get a nice scene with Sam and Rhodey. Rhodey makes an appearance. They introduce Bucky with a flashback to a Winter Soldier mission, with one that haunts him. We actually come to find out that this mission has to do with the son of a guy that he's befriended and he's trying to make penance for, because although he's been pardoned of everything he did as the Winter Soldier, one of his conditions of his pardon is he has to go to therapy and talk about all these issues, and a therapist has to clear him. So we get some nice back and forth with him and the therapist, some nice personality from Bucky, showing that he's kind of come forward a little bit from being the Winter Soldier to turning back into civilian Bucky. Kind of a little bit reminiscent of the Bucky Steve exchange before Bucky went off to war at the beginning of First Avenger. They have the Bucky and the Doc have great chemistry. I said the Bucky and the Doc have great chemistry. It's very obvious that Bucky is suffering from PTSD, or that the writers want you to infer that he's suffering PTSD, which is one of the issues that needs more light. And I think this was a great way to address that. Kudos to the writers for throwing that in very subtly. Mr. Nakashima is the guy that he befriended, and we'll come to find out throughout the run of the 6 episodes that he changes his perspective of how he has to make penance for what he's done. He knows Bucky knows he killed Nakashima's son as the Winter Soldier, but he doesn't exactly know how to make it right. And we find out in the end how he makes it right. Great threads with Sam in LaCroix, Louisiana. It's apparently where he lives. His family lives. We found out, his family were fishermen. We find out that he has a sister and some nephews, and just some very good family threads here. Getting to see the civilian side of Sam, adding some depth to the character, which is what you want to see in a series, and what you want to see more of going into Phase 4, because you want to care more about what were essentially side characters in the first 3 phases. So I think they're on the right track here in this episode. And then top it all off, after Bucky struggles this episode with dealing with Nakashima, and Sam dealing with his sister, and the family business is in trouble, and dealing with the bank and all of that. And Sam dealing with the rise of the Flag Smashers. He turns on the TV and sees that the shield that he gave up to the Smithsonian is on TV with a new Captain America. and it looks like he feels completely betrayed, and Bucky just outright irritated at the beginning of the next episode. But overall, I thought this was a great introduction. I thought this was a great setup. It took me on a start of a ride. This was pretty much, I felt like this was pretty much, if you've ever been on a roller coaster, that moment where you're on the ride, you're going up, and you feel like, oh, something exciting is about to happen, and it ends right at the peak of where the roller coaster would go over to make the big drop. That's what I felt like watching this episode. So very fun, very entertaining, and just good all depth and characters and story. So I really enjoyed it. So episode 2 was called The Star Spangled Man. Episode 1, by the way, was called, I don't know if I covered it, but it was called New World Order. Episode 2, The Star Spangled Man, opens up with John Walker, who is the new Captain America, or who they want to be the new Captain America. We'll find out he's the first ever recipient of 3 Medals of Honor. He has a buddy named Lamar Hoskins, who I believe is a sergeant. Introduction of John Walker in this episode very much, to me, kind of mirrored a little bit of Steve's introduction as Captain America in the first Avenger, when he was still being like the puppet for the government, where they wouldn't put him actually going to the front lines, but they wanted him as a propaganda piece. That's what it pretty much felt like here. He's at his old high school. He's being paraded out in front of a crowd. He's got to talk to the people out in the crowd, and he's being interviewed by what we assume is some big shot reporter. And the whole piece is just, I think, purposefully cringy, because it looks like and supposed to be propaganda. And John Walker just comes off as a tryhard, meaning that he knows he's charismatic and he knows he has this mantle, and he wants to use it for his own gain, is what it seems like. So the writing here was just fantastic in getting you not to like the guy. So right off the bat, we're starting good in episode 2. So far, great. We also get Bucky and Sam's first scene together in this episode. Bucky and Sam are at odds with each other because Sam gave up the shield, and Bucky's not too happy about it. And he's also further compoundedly pissed off that the government has chosen a new Captain America that wasn't approved by Steve. He feels betrayed by Sam, and rightfully so, which we'll get into in a little bit later. Bucky, we found out Bucky doesn't like Red Wing because it's a mechanical thing, and apparently Bucky has a thing against mechanical things, having been the Winter Soldier and dealing with, mechanical things attacking him. We also find out that Bucky can survive a 200-foot jump out of a plane, which is good information to know. That we know I think it shows off how, strong Bucky's generation of super soldiers were, Bucky and Steve's, compared to what we will come to know from the Flag Smashers and their serum. Oh, by the way, spoiler alert, the Flag Smashers are super soldiers. But there is a difference. There's a key difference. Bucky is referred to in this episode for the first time as the White Wolf, which I'll have to read into, but I think that is a big comic Easter egg. Bucky and Sam's back and forth in this episode is very much just setting up the brotherhood that I know is to come, and I liked it. I loved every moment of every scene that the two had together. It was just enjoyable to watch. It was funny, it was intriguing, and it was captivating. So if you get the chance, I definitely recommend watching the show just for that alone. Another great scene in this episode is the introduction of Carly Morgenthau, who is actually a character created based off of another character in the Marvel universe called Karl Morgenthau, and he was known as the Flag Smasher and had the same ideals as the Flag Smashers in the show. They just simply took that character, made it an organization, and made a character called Carly to head up that organization. That's my opinion of how that it would track with what we see. But yeah, you know, Bucky, the mission that Bucky and Sam are on. Bucky jumps on the moving truck, gets in the truck. They think the Flag Smashers have a hostage, but we come to find out it's Carly, and then she's a leader. You have this moment of Bucky in the truck, looking at her. She comes creeping out like, you know, some scared kid, looking around the corner. But we come to realize that she's trying to figure out who this invader to her truck is. Although I wonder why she was in the truck alone. It leads me to think it must have been a setup of some sort, which makes sense given what the Flag Smashers know about what's going on and who's involved. But yeah, you got this great scene. You know, Bucky thinks he's about to save a hostage, and then he turns around, tell Sam through the earpiece that he's found the hostage. He turns back around, Carly's standing there facing him, kicks him out the door, puts her mask on, and you realize, oh shit, she's part of this group. And then a fight ensues. They all get up on top of the trailers of the trucks, and they start fighting. John Walker shows up conveniently, which we later find out that he was tracking Sam's tech. Go figure. And you get this great moment of John Walker hopping out, and he says, he says, Sam, John Walker, Captain America, like, you really need to introduce yourself, dude. I mean, everybody saw the press conference, really. Which leads into one of the character, I guess, flaws, or the character irritations for me is he is very much egotistical, and he has to be, he wants to be acknowledged as Captain America because there's a sense of, you know, me attitude. So I thought that was well written, but it's irritating to watch. You get a great mirror dynamic of the duos of John Walker and his buddy Hoskins versus the duo of Sam and Bucky fighting. John Walker and Hoskins are pretty much on the same page, fighting back to back. Bucky and Sam aren't. They have to build that, and it's very interesting to watch. You get to see a great moment of Carly kicking Cap off of the truck, which shows that, yes, he's Captain America, but he doesn't have the skills and abilities that Steve had. And it very much shows in his face in the next moment in that scene where he's picking himself up off the ground and looking at what happened. And that's going to be a theme that runs throughout the 6 episodes. The Flag Smashers have a catchphrase, one world, one people. That's what they're fighting for. They're fighting for basically to keep the status quo of, you know, no borders. Everybody on the planet is one big family. Whereas the GRC, the Global Repatriation Council, is trying to put borders back to where they were pre-blip. And they don't want that. They think it's better now than it would be if you go back to the closed borders and where the lines were before pre-blip, like the country lines. Bucky is still pissed about the shield. They have a conversation on the plane ride back, and Bucky reveals Isaiah Bradley, who is the first Black Captain America, the first Black super soldier. He was made during the Korean War, and the reason why nobody knows about him is because he did pretty much what Steve did on his first mission out. He went and rescued a bunch of POWs, but instead of being rewarded like Steve was, he was caged up and experimented on because most of those super soldiers died anyway at some point after that. So he's kind of jaded in that respect. because he didn't get what Steve got, and because it was the times and it was all off books, and in the 50s and 60s, if it was off books, you pretty much didn't exist. Whereas in World War II, if it was off books and it went well, you got acknowledged for it. If it was off books and didn't go well, it just never mentioned. But anyway, regardless, so Sam is understandably upset that nobody ever mentioned this to him or to Steve, for that matter. During this whole conversation about Isaiah Bradley, Bucky gets arrested, which the cops rolling up on them was interesting because it mirrored real life. And I think that's what good, essentially sci-fi does, is it mirrors real life. It tells stories that you can't tell otherwise because it's too political, too controversial. But here they can tell it. Cops rolling up. Oh, is this going to be a police brutality scene? No, it was just, it could have been, but it wasn't because of who Sam is. But it makes you think, which is very nice and very good for fantasy, sci-fi, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, Bucky gets arrested, and because he apparently violated his pardon agreement by missing a therapy session. And anyway, we cut to Walker bails him out, and 86 is his pardon condition. So, and that's outright spoken. So he no longer has to go to therapy, but the therapist, calls an emergency session towards the end of this episode, and you get to see a therapy session with Sam, Bucky, and the therapist, which is just great story, great character development through this scene. And it's here that we see Bucky's real issue with everything and what his problem with Sam is. And the quote here is, "Steve believed in you. He gave you that shield. You threw it away like it was nothing. Maybe he was wrong about you. And if he was wrong about you, he was wrong about me." Essentially what Bucky's saying here is his best friend, Steve Rogers, believed in Sam so much that he chose him as the successor, Captain America, and that if Sam is going to be willing to go against that character that Steve believed in, that maybe Steve was wrong. And if Steve could be wrong about that, then Steve's faith in Bucky to change and be better could be wrong. And it strikes some confidence issues in him, and that's what his issue is. I thought it was a great moment of revelation for the character. I thought it was a great crack in the armor, so to speak. And now it lets us into that character and to connect with that character a little more. I definitely felt something when I watched this scene, and I definitely connected Bucky more now after having watched that scene. One other thing, there was a mention, the Power Broker is first mentioned in this episode as well. But overall, I thought episode 2 was a great rising action, a great rising movement. It set the right tone. It built up in the right places. So let's move on to episode 2, Power Broker. So essentially, in this episode, they're going to see Zemo. Zemo, as we all know, was in Civil War. He's the reason for Civil War, for the Civil War of the heroes. They go to Berlin. Zemo's sitting in his cell. I thought the whole introduction of Zemo was fantastic. I thought the Zemo sitting back in the dark, coming to the light, uttering the code phrases, trying to mess with Bucky's head. Then Bucky saying, "Yeah, that doesn't work anymore." I thought that was fantastic. Such a great way to introduce that character, and it just pulled you in. Bucky views Zemo as the type of guy who basically the mission they're on, trying to find this super serum and who's behind it, goes against everything Zemo believes in. And he may be crazy, but he has a code. It pretty much solidifies why Bucky trusts him to a certain degree for this mission. And then Bucky and Sam talking in their hideout about, let me give you a hypothetical. And then Sam, right off the bat, what'd you do? So essentially what happened is Bucky broke Zemo out of jail, but he didn't actually break him out of jail. He just puts the pieces in motion so he could escape. Zemo walks into the hideout, and then they agree to terms. We go to a plane where we see Zemo's butler, and we find out that Zemo and his family were Sokovian royalty, and he's a baron and all of this, which honestly, it didn't really surprise me because I figured he was something like that anyway, that he was some sort of rich kid. On the plane ride, the banter between Sam, Bucky, and Zemo was fantastic. I quite thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's bits and pieces like this that kept me watching, and that's what good shows and good writing do. Some further highlights. Zemo makes a valid point when they're talking about symbolism. He was talking about how there's a danger in putting people like Cap on pedestals because there's his shield, things like his shield become symbols, and people forget about the reasons and the person that made those symbols relevant, which ties back into what I was talking about earlier with Sam mentioning at the Smithsonian donation about the shield. We come to find out they need to go to a place called Madripoor, which is apparently a mercenary haven. Someplace out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. One of the things I was thinking about while watching this is like nobody tours there, nobody goes there outside of, mercenaries, thugs, and pirates. But I digress. They have a decent attempt at humanizing Carly in this episode, trying to make you care about her. But the one thing I thought of is we don't know anything about the character she is mourning because she goes to the death of one of her mentors, and we really haven't really been told anything about her. But they end up telling us more about learning tidbits here and there as the episode goes on about her mentor. So I can forgive them there, but at the time it was like, why do I care? But they did a good job of making you think about the character if you're paying attention. Sam is Smiling Tiger, freaking hilarious. He's wearing this interesting looking suit. Sam says to Zemo, "You got me dressed like a pimp," and Zemo says, "Only someone from America would think that a nice dressed black man is dressed like a pimp." Conrad Mack is one of the most feared and respected mercs in the business, essentially. So in Madripoor, they go to find out information about the super serum. They go to a contact. They have to play their roles. Sam is the Smiling Tiger. Zemo is himself, and Bucky has to play the Winter Soldier down to the T, even listening to the supposed codes from Zemo. There's a great bar fight scene, and ultimately all the cloak and dagger is null and void because Sam blows his cover by making what I still don't believe it, and I think is one of the weakest points of the story, in my opinion, is Sam makes a rookie mistake by leaving his cell phone on full sound, which someone of his experience would never, ever, ever do. Period. I don't care what you're doing. If you're trained and you've got that automatic thing in your mind, like Sam's been trained, you'd have never done that going into a potential hostile situation like that. But it's a convenient plot device, so we'll move on. So once their cover's blown, they have to kill the contact. The contact apparently is very important. So upon her death, there's a 1 million Bitcoin, or no, 1,000 Bitcoin bounty put on their heads. They've got to escape Madripoor. And then Sharon Carter shows up, who has been on the run and out of contact since the end of Civil War because she's been enemy of the state. My first thought seeing her is, how is someone like Sharon Carter walking around freely in a place like Madripoor? Like, she can go from low town to high town. No one bats an eye. It's like, that was a red flag for me. And come to find out later on, spoiler alert, we come to find out she's the power broker. So, or we're led to believe she's the power broker anyway. And she doesn't seem too upset or too vengeful against Sam or Bucky. She seems to want to help them at every turn, which makes me wonder what her motivations truly are and why she's doing what she's doing. Because at first she doesn't want to pardon, and she thinks, the whole patriotism thing is crap and this, that, and the other. But at the end, in the final episode, which I'll get to, she's kind of changed her tune on the pardon. So it makes me intrigued for what they're setting up in the future. They tell Sharon that they got a name from the contact about who to see about the serum, and it was this guy named Nagel. Sharon leads them to Nagel, and throughout this entire episode, Sharon's given off very dark Peggy Carter vibes, like she's her aunt, but kind of a little bit darker. And darker doesn't necessarily mean evil or bad, just like tougher, grittier. So she leads him to this container yard where he's working in a lab container, cliche. The doctor's cocky, he's arrogant, which you would expect for someone in his position. And come to find out that, Nagel worked on the serum and perfected the serum post Siberia from the super soldiers that we met in Civil War. After that, he worked for Hydra and then the CIA, and he worked on the blood from Isaiah Bradley. And then he said he perfected it, but he took out the need for the gamma radiation, the extra machinery. It was just, a serum. And for me, that was a key point, because these super soldiers, without that gamma radiation, they don't have the super healing that Steve had. They don't have the toughness that Steve had as far as longevity. That puts that serum subpar to the original serum in my mind. So it's almost there, but it's not quite. So right there, they're giving a distinguishment between the original Doctor serum and this serum. It's not a perfect replica, but it's close. And that's why these super soldiers can be killed so easily, because they don't have the super regeneration like Steve did. Because there's also a scene where Carly gets shot and she's bleeding and she's holding it, and it really hurts, and it goes on for a couple of scenes, not in this episode, but in like 2 episodes. But anyway, at the end of this episode, Bucky, Sam, and Zemo are going into a hotel room to look for Carly, and we come to find out that Bucky sees that they're being followed, not by the person, but by the tech, and he says he's going to go for a walk. And then at the end, he's like, I know you're following me, so you might as well just come on out. And we come to find out it's Io from Wakanda, the Black Panther's right-hand woman. And come to find out that they're there for Zemo, and that leads into the next episode, The Whole World is Watching, which is a great starting to the climax. We get seen how Io was part of the deprogramming of Bucky. We get to see how he came to terms with that, and how Io was deeply a part of that. Flashback to the present. Io gives him 8 hours to turn over Zemo or else. So overall, this particular episode is just them, trying to find Carly and trying to get to the bottom of all this. There's a great scene with Zemo bribing the kids with candy. Because this sets up, he gets information that Bucky and Sam don't have. And then later on, you think he's going to withhold the information when they ask him directly what the kids said. And he surprises us by actually revealing the truth, which is, it's like, why did he tell the kids not to trust the guys if he's just going to tell them anyway? And the only thing I could think of is maybe he just had to play a character because he feels like he's always on and he didn't know who else might be watching or listening. And so he had to play the part, which I think goes back to what he was talking about in Madripoor, playing the part. They run into John Walker again, and John Walker's pissed. He has no patience. This guy just has no diplomacy skills at all. He has no long-term thinking skills. It's just mission, mission, mission. Get it done, get it done, get it done. As far as he's got very much tunnel vision, essentially, which is not good for someone in his position. They finally talk John Walker and let them try to talk to Carly. They meet Carly at the funeral. Sam goes in alone, tries to talk her down, and almost has her talk down. And then John Walker does his John Walker thing and is impatient. He goes in, and it just ruins anything that Sam and Carly have built up. There was another great scene when they're back in the hotel, and John Walker walks in trying to pull rank, saying to hand over Zemo, and Sam's like, "You ain't leading shit. You ain't in charge of shit here." And there was a moment before this where Carly had the vials of serum, dropped it. Zemo comes in, stomps on all of it, and apparently he didn't get it all. John Walker knocks him out and picks up a bottle of serum and puts it in his pocket. Now, it never shows him taking the serum when he took the serum, but at the same time, we also know that serum should, in theory, take a while to kick in fully. So, and between now and the beginning of next episode is only like an hour or two in between the episodes, as far as I could tell. And he ends up becoming a super soldier in a matter of an hour or so, which I thought was kind of a convenient plot ploy, but yeah, whatever. So back to the hotel room. Then the Wakandans show up trying to take Zemo, and they fight, and they kind of have a truce because Zemo gets away. And there was a great moment here where John Walker gets his ass kicked by the Wakandans, and the Io's second in command, I guess, picks up the shield, and I'm like, are they going to take the shield? Are they going to take the shield back to Wakanda? Because technically the shield is the Wakandan property. Technically, that vibranium is from Wakanda, so they could have taken it and nobody would have batted an eyelash. But I was like, leave it, let's go. So it was a great, like, oh shit, is things about to get real here? But I like that. That was one of the better moments. And it turns into a great moment for John Walker, because John Walker's sitting there thinking to himself, he's looking at the floor saying they weren't even super soldiers and I couldn't handle them. And it's like, dude, these women are warriors. They've been fighting every day of their lives since they were kids. I mean, of course you're going to get your ass kicked. I mean, if you knew anything, if you taught yourself anything, if you know a little bit about the world, you'd know that of course you're going to get your ass kicked by Wakandans. And it's in this episode that we start to see Carly has savior syndrome, meaning she views herself as some sort of savior person, and that's a bad thing for someone who has taken something like the super soldier serum, because now that's going to be amplified and made worse. And towards the end of the episode, which I thought was a fantastic cliffhanger for the climax, was John Walker's buddy Hoskins gets killed by Carly. He runs after one of the flag smashers that wasn't Carly, because Carly got away. Tracks him down in the middle of a public square and kills him with the shield. Everybody in public saw Captain America bloody someone to death with the shield, got it on film and all this, and you see this great scene right at the end of John Walker holding the shield with the blood on the bottom of it. And I'm just like, wow, the complexion has just changed. Like, you fucked up. And it passes over to Sam, and you know Sam's like, oh shit, I screwed up. Bucky's like, I told you so. He didn't say that, but that was what the vibe I got off of Bucky. And you could tell the complexion has absolutely changed, which I thought this was a fantastic follow-up. It just keeps getting better and better, in my opinion. And then in episode 4, Truth, basically it opens up with John Walker dealing with the fallout emotionally from what he just did. Basically, he justifies it to himself mentally, and basically thinking of his friend, he says, time to go to work, because that's what his friend would say. And basically, when Sam and Bucky enter, he shows no remorse, no understanding of what he did. He just automatically jumps into defensive mode, which is a bad character flaw for someone who's supposed to be a Captain America. Sam tries to reason with him, and he tells John Walker, "You've got to give me the shield. We can talk to we can talk to the senators. I'm sure that we could negate some of what's coming." He's like, "But you're gonna have to give me the shield." And right then, John Walker jumps into further defensive mode, saying, "Yeah, you had me for a second, but you don't want to do this. You don't." And then Bucky's like, "Yeah, we do." And they fight. And in the end, they have to break John Walker's arm in order to get the shield off of him. And keep in mind, John Walker is a super soldier at this point. So it took both Sam and Bucky, Sam losing his wings and Bucky pretty much doing his best to hold his own against Walker by himself. They broke his arm, took the shield, and they're all laying on the ground. Bucky gets the shield. There's a moment where Bucky has the shield and he throws it down at Sam's head and walks away. And he keeps saying, "I am Captain America." So he truly believes his delusion that he is Captain America, that he is this great emblem of all things good. He's got this delusion of grandeur, which, again, not a good character trait. Torres mentions that, John Walker very publicly killing a foreign national is going to have grave consequences for Walker, which we'll see in when he goes in front of the senators, which we see shortly after Sam leaves his wings with Torres saying, "Keep him." Apparently, John Walker has been, other than honorably discharged, been stripped of the title Captain America. You see him in his army dress uniform. And John Walker attempts to talk and present his case to the senators, but they're not having any of it. And he's talking to the senator who's been the same senator we've seen in the first episode, standing next to Rhodey. He's the one that presented John Walker to the world. And I got to think at this point, is this senator involved in something deeper? Or is he going to become a bigger character later on down the line? Why are we seeing this one particular senator so much? So after all of this, him trying to talk and being shot down and getting mad and telling him, you created me. I did what you wanted me to do. And my first thought was that was your problem. You did what you were told instead of leading as Cap. So John Walker never had the mentality to be Captain America, in my opinion. After everything, he meets a woman, Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, who's played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I thought was a great casting choice. So her short name is Val. She keeps her back to his wife. But basically, this scene is setting up John Walker becoming U.S. agent. We don't know what organization Val is part of, but we get the feeling she's a big player some way in moving things behind the scenes. So, we get more in this episode of Carly going off the deep end. She's dealing with the aftermath of her actions from the last episode. I believe it was the last episode where she killed Hoskins, and then before that, in a previous episode, she killed people tied up in a building. Even though they worked for the GRC, they were still hostages. She killed hostages. So she's dealing with that, and we see her further go down the rabbit hole of darkness. She doesn't quite get that violence begets violence. She thinks that she has to answer and get their attention by doing the exact same things that she perceives them doing, meaning people like the GRC, those in power. And nobody stops her, nobody corrects her, no one, she's got all yes people around her, essentially. We also get a nice resolution between Bucky and Zemo in this episode, where Zemo's in Sokovia at the memorial. Bucky walks up behind Zemo, and he starts talking to Bucky, and he's like, it took you long enough to show up and all of this, and he's telling her you still need to kill her. She's only going to escalate. She's never going to truly stop unless she's dead. And he tells Bucky, I forgive you for what you did. I crossed my name off your list because you have peace with me. I hold no grudges. And Bucky's holding his gun at his head, and he pulls the trigger, but it's a fake out. It's blank, nothing. And then you see the Wakandans walk up behind him, and he's like, ladies. And so he doesn't kill Bucky, because one of Zemo's final lines to him was, be the killer you are. And him pulling the trigger, showing that he's not killer first anymore. So I thought that was a great resolution between the characters and a great moving on point for Bucky. We get some more time with Bucky and Sam in the civilian world. You can definitely see that Sarah is Sam's anchor point to reality. You get to also see Sam go back to Isaiah, and he gets a little bit of perspective, talk to him one-on-one, and he gets to see how bitter Isaiah is, saying, no, they're never going to make a black Captain America, and no self-respect. The key line for me in this episode for Sam getting perspective on what to do is, no self-respecting black man would want to be Captain America. And I thought that because the very next cut was to Sam's face, and he gives him this look like, well, what's that supposed to mean? And he later has a conversation with Sarah about what would be the point of all the suffering of everybody that's come before me if I don't stand up and fight and continue fighting and take up this fight for others. So you pretty much know at this point he wants to take up the mantle. You get to see, some bonding between Sam and Bucky in the real world, fixing the boat, spending time in LaCroix, Louisiana. I thought all of that was just great storytelling, great character development, and building the Bucky-Sam bromance. You get to see Sam training with the Shield montage, which I thought was, every good superhero movie needs a good montage if it fits. I loved it. They showed that they also show a weakness for the Flag Smashers. They use an app to mobilize their people, which will come to bite them in the ass in the last episode. And then at the end, we get to see some things from the GRC. And one of the main sticking points that ends the episode for me is they're talking about the GRC initiative. They're talking about, resetting the lines and moving people. And one of the senators brings up, well, how do we do this? The optics alone are bad. And then the shady senator that's been in the series all along says, the optics are whatever we show them. Do we even need to bother with a vote? I have troops in place. Talking very much dictatorish, talking very much fascist. And it's very troubling to see where the world that our heroes live in are going. And in the very next episode, we get some resolution. So basically, I'm going to try and cover this real quick because I've been going for an hour. So basically, Bucky shows up in the new Falcon Captain America suit. He's got the Falcon suit on, but he's also got the Cap shield. He's in the Cap colors. Freaking fantastic. I loved it. It was everything I hoped it would be. I just wish they'd have shown it as he opened the case at the end of the episode, but that's a moot point. That's a nitpicking point at this point. He fights with Batroc, who is a recurring villain in the Cap and Falcon comic books, but Carly tries to recruit Bucky, was never going to happen. Bucky saying he fell twice, talking about how he fought for something bigger than himself twice and fell. He fell when he was with Steve in World War II, and that's how he became the Winter Soldier. And then he fell again when, I'm assuming at the end of Endgame, when he was fighting in Wakanda, and then he got dusted. So that's what I assume he is referring to. Carly just showing no remorse and just wanting what she wants, setting hostages on fire, just showing how much she's gone overboard. Carly is completely lost at this point. Then we get to see Sharon taking out one of the Flag Smashers with mercury vapor, basically an acid bomb, which, if Peggy Carter would have done that, we'd have been up in arms over it, because that's just cheaty as fuck. But Sharon, I kind of buy it. It's in this episode that we actually get to, because Batroc comes in when Sharon is holding Carly at gunpoint, and she reveals that that she's the power broker and this, that, and the other thing, and that she was actually working for Sharon in Madripoor. And Batroc tries to extort more money out of Sharon, and Sharon says, I don't do blackmail, shoots Batroc, although we never see him die. We actually never see him die, so I don't know if he's actually dead or not. We get to see Cap using all of his tech. The shield ejecting from his back. We get to see him taking out a helicopter by flying directly into it, taking out the pilot, and prepping one, and using Red Wing to contact one of the people inside the chopper that had pilot skills and tell him what he was going to do. I thought that was great. Great storytelling, great setting up for things in the future. One of the defining lines for Carly here was when John Walker shows back up, and she says, I don't want to hurt people that don't matter, which is a very supremacist thing to say, reinforcing what Zemo was talking about in an earlier episode. This is also a gut check point for John Walker. This is a point of no return point for Walker. there's a moment where the last van of hostages is on the edge of a scaffolding, and he's got to make a choice between going after Carly or trying to save the van. And he ends up saving the van and abandoning his vengeance on Carly. It's a character turning point. I don't know what they're going to do with him as U.S. agent after this, but you get to see him working with Sam. You get to see him working with Bucky. They actually track down the flag smashers using the app. There's a moment where he says, "Really, it's a great app." And then, John Walker, as they're walking up on him, he quotes Abe Lincoln saying, "Mercy bears richer fruit than strict justice," which I thought was an interesting quote for that character, given what we know he's done in the last episode. The fight between Sam and Carly was a very great finishing touch. Carly trying to get Sam to fight her, and him refusing, very reminiscent of Cap not wanting to fight Bucky, wanting to believe in the good of people till the end. I just thought it was great building up Sam as that Cap type character. Then at the end, you get Sam bringing Carly's body to the EMS units, and then walking up to the GRC representatives that are there, and he gives this big long speech about you've got to do better. They were calling her a terrorist, and Sam's like, you got to stop using these labels, because how do you think they view you? And I thought that was a great freaking point. And this may be a turning point from Marvel Cinematic Universe in how they deal with that sort of thing. Or it may not. I don't know. But he's got a point of these labeling people like this. It does nothing to help. He makes a point of, this girl was willing to take on the most powerful people in the world to stop you, and you never once stopped to ask why. And he says, we've got to do better. And I thought it was a great message for Sam as the new Cap. Do better. So one last thing I'll talk about here is after all of this is done and Sam's debuted as Captain America, I guess officially, and Bucky finally tells Nakashima, we assume that because he told him everything that was involved, that he just not welcome around Nakashima anymore, but we never really get to hear what Nakashima's response was. But we assume that he's not going to be going back there anytime soon because of that, because he basically was able to give Nakashima closure about his son, even though it cost him a friendship. Sam goes back to Isaiah Bradley one more time, tells him and talks to him about becoming Cap, and Isaiah is kind of like being sarcastic about it. And I thought it was I think that is going to be an interesting relationship to see develop if they keep that dynamic going forward, or keep that character around going forward. But he tells Isaiah, come with me, I got something I want to show you. He brings him to the Smithsonian, and apparently Sam had them put Isaiah Bradley and his story in the Smithsonian. And you could see the emotion on Carl Lumley's face, which that's who plays Isaiah Bradley. If you don't know, Carl Lumley is a great actor. He was probably the first ever black superhero on TV in the 90s, a show called Mantis, which was it was a good series that just didn't get the credit it deserved, and it was changed a lot by Fox, and it just didn't get the love it deserved. Then he was on another long-running TV show called Alias with Jennifer Garner. He played Agent Dixon, which I loved him in that show. But Carl Lumley is a great actor. I love that man. But you could see the emotions on his face and his son. He just hugs Sam, and it's a great closing moment for the Isaiah Bradley storyline. He finally gets some peace, some resolution, and some justified reward, which was very emotional. you get to see also at the end of the episode, it changes from Falcon and Winter Soldier to Captain America and the Winter Soldier. So I wonder if this is the end of the Falcon and Winter Soldier and the start of the Captain America and Winter Soldier, if that's what a new season's going to be called. But we'll see what happens. And then in the end credits, you've got Agent Carter in front of the same panel. They call her Agent Carter, which was good to hear. I mean, the last time we heard Agent Carter was with Peggy. So she is now Agent Carter in the Marvel Universe. They offer her a full pardon, her old job back, and all of this. And then she says it'd be my honor. She walks out with this kind of cocky look. She's outside the Capitol building and she's on her phone. And all we hear her say is, line up our buyers. We're about to have access to all government tech, contracts, secret stuff. The world is our oyster. We don't know who she's talking to, so we still don't know if she's actually the power broker or what she's doing, what she's working for, what her end game is. So I think it's going to be kind of interesting. I don't think it's going to be what it looks like, but maybe it will. I don't know. But anyway, overall, I think this series was a great series. I thought it was absolutely fantastic, start to finish. The only real gripe I have with it, I wish they would tell us explain to us a little bit how Sam's tech works. Like, is it AI? Is it integrated into his glasses, or is it integrated? How does it work? That's my only gripe. But overall, I thought it was a fantastic series. Great story, great character. It adds depth to the MCU, which it needs for going into Phase 4, and it adds, an emotional roller coaster. It is an emotional roller coaster from start to finish. Overall, I highly recommend it. Absolute A+ from me. I don't know. That's my thoughts. What do y'all think? Let me know in the comments section below. All right. And even if you dislike this video, let me know why you dislike in the comments. Let's have a conversation. All right, you guys. That's it from me. Again, my name is William. I'm the Ramble Man. Check out all my other videos in my on my channel, and if you like it, if you like what I'm doing, hit that like button. Maybe subscribe. If you want a little bit more personal, one-on-one, I stream on Twitch every Tuesday and Saturday after 4 p.m. Eastern. Check me out over there. Link will be in the description below. Outside of that, that's it for me. Hope you like this review. Take it easy. Happy streaming, happy gaming, and have a good one.